I'm blessed. It's a few L's and millions, so turn that loss to a...
Dude, what's up, man?
Good to see you, bro.
Dude, welcome to the show.
Been a minute. This is so exciting.
It is super exciting, man. So, for those of you that don't know David Heine, by way of Chicago, I'm really excited to have you here today for a couple reasons. One, I feel like when we met, and I want to talk about that story, when we met, you were just getting into the business, working with a big agent, and I've watched sort of your progression, not only as a real estate agent, but as an entrepreneur. From my perspective, somebody that's always been trying to get better and really committed to perfecting your craft, but willing to take suggestion. You're teachable, you're coachable. All of these are important ingredients, in my opinion, to becoming successful in any endeavor. But I've been able to watch you do it, and been able to watch you stay relevant and sort of reinvent yourself. And now with this new purchase, which I want to talk about, it's cool, dude. It's really an honor to know you and to have you be able to call you a friend and to watch everything you've done, man. It's super exciting. So welcome to the show.
Likewise, and I appreciate you for bringing me on, man.
Yeah, you got it, buddy. So for those that don't know who you are, why don't we start there? Who is David Heine? Tell us a little bit about, what brought you out to Colorado and where you're from and what life was like growing up.
Yeah, so 30,000 foot view. Farm boy is what I am at the roots. I grew up in a rural Illinois town, very small town that's now starting to take off a little bit.
What town?
It's called Elburn. It's got one of the best meat markets in Illinois called Reams, if you ever get to go there.
Okay.
Make sure that you go by Reams. That is what I go home for every year when I bring the beer sticks home.
Oh, yeah?
After I get back for Christmas, that's where I get all that stuff.
Oh, very cool.
So growing up on a farm, a little bit different upbringing than most people. It was very quiet. High school was only, I think, 150 people in my class. So it was a very sort of laid back, nonchalant, but I still had responsibilities. And I think that framed my life moving forward, especially once I started working for myself. But until about 19, both me and my now wife of we've been together almost 11 years, but married almost 4. And we grew up actually about 10 minutes apart from each other. Never knew each other until about a year before we decided to move. Well, I say she decided that she wanted to finish her degree outside the Midwest and asked if I wanted to tag along. And that was about a year into our relationship. And I hadn't explored much. Like Indiana was about as far as I had traveled. So I was ready to start stepping out of my comfort zone a little bit. I was 19, I'd spent my whole life basically just around the Midwest pocket, and it was time to go start getting out there, exploring things. I was meeting people, I had friends that were starting to move, and I was like, okay, this is time, I need to spread my wings and start trying something.
How many people in the town?
Oh man, our town was maybe 15,000.
Okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't big, small town. You knew most of your neighbors. Our closest neighbor was like a mile away, and it was a very cool place to grow up. Though I would not change that for anything. It gave me a really cool perspective about life. Now that I live in Denver, obviously a bigger city than I'm used to, not just Chicago, but where I actually grew up.
Yeah.
What
about your parents? Like, what kind of work did they do?
Good question. So they owned a construction company growing up. That's my whole background.
Okay.
It's construction all the way up until I got into real estate. And the very final straw of me saying, I'm ready to change this and do something else was I was pouring concrete and the guy next to me was 40 years old, falling apart. And I said, I can't do that. And I knew I wanted to own a business at some point. I had watched my parents kind of maneuver through the struggles, and I knew that I wanted to go down that road. I didn't want to get into construction, but I knew real estate was the way to go. I had people in my life at that point that were involved with it. They had rentals, they had transacted with real estate, and kind of guided me through what that looked like and how they've progressed through using real estate. And so that was kind of where the kick came in. So once we left Illinois, we moved to Oregon, Southern Oregon. Beautiful area, Ashland.
With your girlfriend at the time?
Yep. So we were dating. We moved into a cottage in somebody's backyard. It was 432 square feet, and we lived there for 3 years together.
Jeez.
After being...
You didn't become sick of each other. That's a good sign.
Towards the end of that experience, I was thinking to myself, okay, I mean, if we can endure this together and still be sane, which she's a therapist, by the way, so that definitely helps.
Got it. I don't know, man. They always say therapists are a little crazy.
She is, but she keeps my crazy.
She's a professional crazy person.
Exactly.
Interesting. So, did you already know at that time that you were going to go into real estate? Like, had you decided when you left the town in Chicago that you were going to do it, or this was sort of an evolution after you left?
Evolution. So we landed in Southern Oregon. I picked up a job where I could, which was at a grocery store doing produce for a minute, and then I got back into what I knew, which was trades. So I got into concrete, but it pays better than grocery. Sure, it's hard labor, but it's also good for mindset and other things like that, physical prowess as well. And so through that, I started meeting people that their day job was concrete. The owner of the company that I worked for, he still was out there pouring concrete with us every day. We were only a crew of 3 guys, and he had 2 or 3 rentals at the time. And he was kind of walking me through how that's progressed over the last few years, because he hadn't owned them that long, but he was starting to see the results from it. And so I was intrigued by that. I was thinking, okay, these guys are building homes, they're buying homes, they're keeping rentals. What is to be made of this kind of situation? So as I progressed, he eventually got me into my first, I call it a home, but it was a double wide trailer next to a meth lab. Absolutely love this story because
I want to hear it.
I talk to clients all the time, but they're like, well, I don't want to give up my nice rental to get into buying or owning my own real estate. And I'm like, sometimes that's the sacrifice that has to be done. That was what I could afford. It was a $200,000 double wide trailer. It was not a great area. But over the next 2 years of owning that trailer, I did some very minor things to it, paint and LVP, luxury vinyl plank flooring. And 2 years later, 2 years and 1 month after our purchase, we sold it for a net of $80,000. And that was, we had the discussion about 6 months prior to that about getting ready to move and coming a little bit closer to Illinois because Oregon is so far out there. And it was just difficult because both of our families are back home. So we walk away from the closing table and I'm thinking to myself, gosh, there is something here. Over 2 years, I just made more than I did in equity than I did the first 2 years actually working for somebody else.
Job, yeah.
Exactly. With very minimal effort. Sure, maybe a mortgage and things like that, but that was a drop in the bucket compared to the possibilities on the other side. Yeah. And so we walk away from there. I'm already thinking, what are my next steps going to be kind of, when we move to Colorado, what's this going to look like? And I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to be building a portfolio, I might as well get my license. I might as well help other people because I'm going to associate with individuals on the same path as myself, and we're going to be on a mission to achieve, whatever it is together. And that's kind of where the passion started to develop. So I cranked out school very fast. When we got here to Colorado, I started transacting within, I think 3 months after we moved here, 4 months after we moved here. And then from there, I'm at Melody. You kind of know the rest.
And so that's incredible. So a couple of things I want to kind of stay on for a second. One is you had said early on you knew that there was something to real estate, right? And you were 19 years old. Like to have that kind of awareness, I think is unique. I think a lot of people that are 19 years old, they're just like, I got to go to school, I got to go to college and get good grades, and hopefully I get this degree and it's going to make me successful, right? And do you remember, if you remember back to that time, was there something, was it the construction business that your parents owned, or what was it really that got you to think to yourself, man, there's something about real estate? Because that was before you went to Oregon. Right? Or was it the sale of the double wide that made you the 80 grand that got you to think there's something to real estate?
That was kind of the
reassurance.
That was the over the hill sort of experience of, oh, this is reality. It's, everyone tells you you can build wealth in real estate. You can, you can do rentals, you can flip, you can do whatever you want. You can just buy a primary and build equity. But until you actually experience it, I think it's difficult to compartmentalize because it seems out of reach for somebody to think, oh, I could go buy a trailer and then walk away with almost 100 grand in the next 2 years.
Well, also the flip side to that is like, I think a lot of people want to have the result right? Like they want to say, hey, about this property, I made 80 grand or whatever the amount is, or I invested in real estate, I own multiple rentals with cash flow. But the reality is that there is a trade-off. I talk about this a lot. It doesn't matter what you're doing in life, there's always a trade-off. You just have to be willing to know yourself and identify whether or not that trade-off is worth it for you, right? But oftentimes you're not getting the end result without trading something or sacrificing something. And for you, it was living in this 400 square foot place next to a meth lab, right?
Yeah.
Like most people aren't willing to do that, right? But you were willing to, and as a result, you were rewarded for that sacrifice. And I think that sometimes, we think that we've got to have it all figured out, right? Like we've got to have this perfect plan. We've got to do all the research. Now, I'm not saying it's not bad to do some research and educate yourself and be somewhat prepared, right?
Of course.
But there's sort of a fine line between that and like, there comes a time where you got to rip off the fucking Band-Aid and just do it,
Yeah.
right? But in doing it, like you probably learned more in the 30 minutes that you were sitting at the closing table, where it's like everything you had been doing now just came down to this one moment where you had this light bulb go off.
Mm-hmm.
And the light bulb was, holy shit. Like, what if I did this with 10 other places? Or what if I, and you start going down that path. So talk about, like, were you thinking at the time about that sacrifice in that way, or was it just kind of dumb luck where you fell into it?
I would love to say that I had, put this path forward and wrote out an entire plan, but to be honest, I didn't do much thinking. It was, I had found people.
You were in love, man.
That's exactly it. I was like, I'm going to do what needs to be done. And I was surrounded by these people that were very successful, more than I thought that I could be. There was another guy that we had worked with alongside. He had a crew of about 30 guys. He ran another concrete outfit, and this guy was making almost $250,000 a month. And I was thinking, that is something that I've never even thought.
He was making $250,000 a month from pouring concrete, from that business, or from real estate?
But he started dipping into real estate too.
Got it. Okay.
So he built this business that was generating revenue left and right, and then he started flipping that into real estate. And then the guy who owned our company, a little more of a smaller game. However, he had those 2 or 3 rentals that he was talking about. I'm making another $3,000 or $4,000 a month from this. It's just kind of free money that I get to spend. And I was thinking to myself, well, I've never really had free income that's just disposable. I've always worked for whatever my paycheck was.
I think for you to have the awareness also, dude, where like you're doing the concrete thing and you're like, man, dude, these guys they're broken down, like their bodies are breaking, right? I think a lot of times it's easy to go down a path without really seeing what the end game is, right? Because that's just sort of like the next step in the direction, right? But really, I talk about being in the right vehicle all the time, right? If you're in the right vehicle and you're willing to put your head down and go to work, like something good is going to come from that, unless you're the shittiest person on the planet, right? Like, but if you're committing time and energy and focus and really developing a plan to go down a path in a vehicle that has the ability to make a lot of money, you're probably going to do okay, right? But also, I think like thinking bigger too, right? Like it doesn't matter what the number is, there's always a bigger number.
Sure.
So it's like, what is it that causes us to stop at a particular number? It's usually disbelief, or we don't believe that we're capable. We don't have the confidence or the self-worth to actually accomplish that thing, right? Like somebody listening to the show right now might be making, 50 grand a year, and in their mind they're going, man, if I could make 500, like, dude, I'm rich. I'm making that's a totally different lifestyle. Then you have people making 500 that are going, man, if I could make 7 figures, right? If I could make 5 million a year. And I think that all of that's possible, but you're never going to accomplish more than what you think is possible and what you convince yourself to be true of?
I mean, you and I see it all the time. We meet with people that think I can never buy a house, when in reality, there's options out here. You don't know what you don't know. And until you talk to somebody or experience something that has either achieved that or is on their way to achieving that, and you're already seeing the results through them, then it becomes a little more apparent that more is possible. Great example. I had this really nice couple that transacted 2 years ago on Halloween, and same boat. They were thinking, man, we're gonna have to save up. Like, we're just not in a position. We can't pull this off. When at the end of the day, they came to closing with, I think, $190, and they bought a house that's already, appreciated to probably 30 or 40,000. And it's a fantastic thing, because now they get to step up from there, and they're over that first sacrifice, which, well, to be honest, was just a sort of unawareness of that they could do it. And we talk, I mean, you and I are both big into mindset. We both talk about all the time that you have to believe that you can, otherwise you're not going to.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about how you and I met, because there's a lot we could go down with that story, but so I think my son was like a year old at the time, and there was right next to that smoothie shop.
Yep.
There was a little like kids music class that we would go to, right? And I walk out of the music class, and my wife says to me, "Hey, let's go get a smoothie," right? So I walk over there, and I'm like, "Oh, there's some real estate agents here. I wonder what they're doing," right? And of course, I recognize Melody's name right away. And I'm like, huh. Now, so talk to us a little bit about, because I think when you get into real estate, there's this idea that you've got to be really, really good at sales. And I would say like that helps, but also you've got to get really good at marketing, right? And that was, to me, like that was a glimpse into an agent that had figured out a way to market that works. So talk a little bit about that story, what you guys did to generate leads, and kind of how that played into your business.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely did crack the code. My mentor, Melody, she's going on 32, 33 years in business this year, and she's a native to Colorado here. There's not a whole lot of them left. And so one of her big goals and missions within her business was to create something that gave back to the community. And so we started the local business campaign. She did about 6 years ago, and I've really taken to it to find kind of my own local businesses and people to partner with. And the local business campaign is such a cool concept. I mean, we're out here in front of a community that we may or may have not met before, and they get to experience maybe something that they haven't experienced, a small local business that they may have not even known existed. And we get to help support that community, because Denver was built on small business. It's not one of these areas where you have all these conglomerate firms moving in to generate the revenue. We are really built on a lot of small business here, and for us to be able to support that meant a lot to me, because you and I both know in these industries, you got to have some sort of passion to stay in it and be able to grind this out. And so the local business campaign, such a fantastic idea. I mean, once a week we go set up somewhere with a local business. It could be a coffee shop, it could be a shake shop. We've gotten into some like Pilates things and other things like that as well. But they're one-off businesses that you're not going to
index when you go to the Pilates classes.
But it's so cool because we get to bring exposure to a business that didn't necessarily have that. I mean, starting a business from the ground up is probably one of the most daunting things any human could try to endeavor. And to have some support of somebody who's already tied into the community, that has marketing available, that can advertise and bring people and just allow them to experience something that they may not have been aware of. Leroy's is a great example. Little bagel shop that we do over by Sloan's Lake. Monday, when they first opened their doors about 6 years ago, used to be their slowest day. Now it's one of their busiest, because 6 months out of the year we're there for Free Bagel Monday, and people are just coming in droves because they either know about us or they want to come find out what Leroy's is all about, but just didn't want to come spend the money to get a bagel.
So talk about the actual strategy with from a marketing and lead generation perspective, because there will be agents listening to this that are like, man, I really need to generate more leads.
Sure.
Right? How do I generate more leads? And they're hearing all the same stuff. And I think this is super unique. So talk a little bit, if you can, about like the postcard, what you do on the postcard to ask questions that kind of, influence them to choose something that gives you a reason to call. Can you talk a little bit about that? Sure.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we're set up there in person, so we get to talk to people one-on-one, which makes a huge difference. Because not everybody knows why you're there, what you're doing, and there's always that, what's the catch? Sure, you can come get something for free, but there's always that thought in the back of your mind. We're in reality, we are putting it out here for free. All it is a card that you can put down a name, address, phone number. Some people fill it out, some people don't. It doesn't really matter to us. We're there to support local businesses, sort of the main structure of it. However, we do collect information from people. Some people are interested in real estate. There's check boxes on our sign-in cards that says, tell me the value of my home, connect me with a lender for pre-approval, help me buy a home, that kind of stuff. There's also an option to do nothing at this time.
Was there something on there that said, like, I'm interested in investment property or?
Yep, help me buy an investment property.
Investment property, okay.
Yeah,
So you've got some check boxes and they can look at it and go, oh, that's me.
Yep, so it covers all the bases. Oh, I'm not interested right now. However, they'll get a call from me at some point throughout the year because we do other events as well. I'm big on my pet photo shoots, the other local businesses that we support. It's a great way to go back to those people and say, hey, we met first at Leroy's. Thanks for helping us support local business. Not sure if you've heard about our other local businesses that we support, but we'd love to have you come through, bring some friends, learn about a new establishment that you haven't been to before.
Guys, that's gold, by the way. I don't know if you caught that, but there was a box that says, I'm not interested, but let me know about upcoming events, right? It says something like that?
Yeah, it says, do nothing at this time, but keep me on your contact list.
Keep me on your contact list. So now they're giving you permission to follow up with them.
Exactly.
And I think in this business, at least, agents, lenders, this is really any sales profession. I think there's oftentimes a lot of call reluctance from people because they're afraid of rejection, or they're not clear on what they're going to talk about, right? So in the back of their mind, they're like, I know I need to be calling people, right? And so they just, which by the way, just doing it is better than not doing it, thinking about it forever, right? But a lot of times they'll do it, and then once that person picks up the other line, that's where they fumble all over themselves and they don't see results. And then they say, making phone calls doesn't work, right? But in reality, no, it's just, there's a better approach. So like on our team, we talk about it. It's called the go-to conversation, right? It's once a week. We identify a topic that we want to talk about. And that's the topic we talk about for the whole week. So for something like this, where you're collecting information, what I love about it is it gives you a reason to have something it gives you something to talk about with these people, right? And oftentimes it's just that simple. It's getting you as the salesperson to feel comfortable with making the call, and it immediately diffuses their guard because it's a rapport building component, right? It's like, hey, we met at Leroy's. You got a free bagel from us, or however you say it.
Exactly, yeah.
It doesn't really matter. You could butcher the whole thing, but if you say, we met at Leroy's, right? You said you weren't interested, but I'm just calling you because we have another event coming up in a couple months. I thought I'd share it with you. By the way, what neighborhood do you live in? Like, you can then morph the conversation into a real estate conversation if they let you, right? But,
Of course.
So, and you guys were killing it, right? Like, you guys would get like a lot of leads from that.
Probably 4 to 5 leads each week that we go out. Now it's not cheap lead generation. You're paying.
Well, 4 to 5 leads, like you're talking people that are interested, but how many actual people would fill out the card?
Pretty much everyone fills it out. And it's, you get I'm not from town. And it's like, yeah, no problem. We're just here to support business. Go
It's
ahead.
like 50 people, 100.
Leroy's, we usually do about 80 to 90 a Monday.
90.
Yeah. And then from that, usually get probably 3 legit leads, 5 that are typically filled out. And then you follow up. Not all the information is always correct, but we're not out here to scan people to figure out who's 100% interested. We're here to host, and I think the important thing about this campaign is that we do it consistently, and we keep reinviting the same people, and we are gathering this following now where it's, oh yeah, we were here last year, we're so glad you guys are back for Free Bagel Monday. I know you guys are doing pet photo shoots coming up, like where can I sign up for that? And so it becomes one, very warm leads that you can pick up the phone and just call anytime, just say, hey, yeah, I've met at Leroy's, and they're, oh yeah, I remember you guys. And then on the other side of the coin, it's just being able to gather larger groups, because I work way better in person. I'm not a phone guy. I can dial, I can make phone calls, but I hate cold calling. Warm calling I can do all day long. It's super easy. Because I've already built rapport with these people. I've met them at the event, and even if they say, oh yeah, I'm not interested, I say, yeah, no problem, just leave an email. We're always doing local events around town. I think you'd like to follow us around.
I was just talking about this, there's really what you're doing by being consistent with something like that is you're establishing trust with those individuals, especially the ones that come back and they see you, now they've seen you for, 7 times and, right, they now know you, or at least have a familiarity. And I was talking about this on another show. There's 2 ways you can build trust. One is transfer of trust, right? Which is like, if I had never met Melody before, but you and I were good friends, and now you introduced me to Melody, Melody trusts you, so then she's immediately going to have some level of trust for me because it's the introduction. So you're transferring trust. The other way is just time, spending time with people. Right? And so one way to do it is by being consistent with your events or being consistent with your phone call. And this is where, I think content is going to be, it's already king, but it's going to be even bigger. You fast forward because, now somebody spends an hour with you on a podcast, right? They watch 7 of them.
Sure. They start feeling,
they know you and man, I know what this dude stands for and what he's all about, and he shared intimate details about his life, and so it develops trust in the same way that an event like that does. It's just a different medium of communication.
Totally.
Right?
I mean, not everybody wants to sit down and shoot videos and edit and produce and come up with all the content to generate, whereas you can go sit in front of a local business and not have to, conceive an hour's worth of content. You can just conversate with people.
Just show up and meet people face to face.
And just talk about whatever. It doesn't have to be real estate. It usually comes back to that because everyone asks what we do. And we say, well, we help people with their real estate goals. We help them build wealth. And through that, in return, allows us to fund these kind of local business projects.
Are there any crazy stories from those events that you have, or is everybody pretty cool? I feel like in Colorado, half the people are stoned smoking weed and the other half aren't, but it's a pretty mellow environment. And
totally.
I
think big lead generation facets is open houses, and that's a totally different vibe. You get people that come to the local businesses, usually they're groggy on a Monday and they're like, oh, this is totally going to make my day. Whereas they walk into an open house and they're the neighbor that's been there for 45 years and they just put up a hand and say, don't talk to me. Right. It's like, okay, fair enough. You get your good prospects through the open house, but it's definitely a different vibe. And then you go to my pet photo shoots. That's another huge thing that I do over the nice warm months. And again, it's a different group of people. It's kind of a different vibe, but it's a great opportunity to just kind of talk. I'm passionate about pets and I love animals and things like that. So it's just a great way for me to organically connect with people because I'm good at open houses now, but there's different ways to connect with people out here. And sometimes, like you say, just having that transfer of trust is going to go miles farther than just trying to meet somebody in an open house and generate a relationship. Right?
So, dude, this is a perfect bridge into talking a little bit about mindset. And before we go any further, where can people find you?
Yes, so I'm real estate _value on all of my social media.
So go follow David, real estate _value on Instagram, on all your socials.
Instagram, Facebook, TikTok.
Cool. Well, the reason I wanted people to know how to find you is because I've done a ton of open houses with all kinds of different real estate agents.
Sure.
Right? Some are great, some are horrific. Right? But I remember the open house I did with you was I was super impressed. Also, I knew at the time you had not been in the business for some super long period of time, but you were super dialed in, dude. And I think a lot of agents out there, they'll say like, I don't do open houses, they don't work. Sure. And I just think it's interesting, right? Because it's like, whatever we speak into the universe is true for us, right? But you got to ask yourself, if you're one of those agents that says, I don't do open houses because they don't work, well, maybe the reason they don't work is because you keep telling yourself they don't work. Exactly. Right? And it's like law of attraction. You're sort of putting that out there. And so then what happens is your brain is searching to try to find evidence of the fact that it doesn't work. So you don't try as hard, you don't try to improve or get better, you don't meet with a mentor to figure out how they do it. So talk a little bit about your philosophy in general. Like you said, you're big on mindset. So, especially traveling from across the country, you're coming into a new space, you don't really know anybody, you're in an industry that's new. What was that like, man? Like going into it, and talk a little bit about some of the moments in your journey where it's like, fuck, man, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And like, the self-doubt and, the imposter syndrome, like all of that stuff I'm sure has come up for you.
You're hitting it all.
How have you gotten through that?
I think there's a few different things going on there. So let's start with when I first got here. First year in real estate was very tough. I made the least amount of money that I've ever made in my entire life, even when I was working back in construction in the Midwest. In that first year, you start thinking to yourself, man, is this the road I want to go down? Like, I have been grinding, 7 days a week. I'm doing everything that I should be doing, and something hasn't clicked yet. Or am I not working hard enough? Do I have the bandwidth to increase my production at this point when I'm already feeling like I'm at my limit? And so the first year, I think, GCI, maybe 30,000. Like, it was abysmal. It was not the position that I wanted to be in, especially moving to a new area that has a higher cost of living. Now I had a little bit saved up, which was kind of nice from the sale of the double. So I was okay, having that nest egg sort of dwindle over time as we got situated. And then year two comes along, and I sort of got my feet under me a little more. Year one was a lot of learning, training, and I got to give it all to Melly. She's the one person that has not forced me, but strongly encouraged that I get into reading, I get into learning about mindset, I take care of myself in a form that allows me to wake up with energy and do this job with energy, because a lot of what we do is transferring energy with our clients. It's so easy to get beat up in a real estate transaction, feel like everything's falling apart and just can't make it to the closing table. But in reality, you just need a team that's energized and excited to be out on the field with you. So I think, year two rolls around. I made about as much as what I was used to in year two, and that was fine. I was like, this is okay, but this isn't why I'm getting into real estate. I am in here to build a portfolio. I then took BOLD, which is it's basically building your life by design through real estate. It's a whole training seminar over 8 weeks, and a lot of it is mindset. And they talk about how to build your life by design. And a lot of that is overcoming things like you talk about, you touched on, like the reticular activation system. What are we out here actually looking for? If you tell yourself that things don't work, it's not going to work. You can look into the real estate game, and there is somebody making 7-8 figures doing open houses. There's somebody making 7-8 figures doing cold calling. There's somebody doing 7 to 8 figures just doing social media. So it doesn't matter what your tactic is, but I think the mindset of having the belief within yourself, and again, the imposter syndrome, I think that was one of my biggest hangups for the first 2 years. It was like, I'm learning all this, and I have a pretty good understanding of what's going on, but this person next to me has been in it for 30 years, and somebody walks in and says, I want someone with experience. Right there. You say, well, I'm the imposter.
That kills you. Yep. How did you, so what were some things you did to improve your self-confidence that led you to having successful interactions or successful transactions that then built that self-confidence or self-worth even more, right? To be able to get to a point where like, okay, like this is what I do and I can do this and I'm good at it.
Sure. I think two big things kind of reframed that for me. One of them was the relentless consistency. I do two open houses minimum every weekend, Saturday, Sunday. I'm out every single weekend doing open houses. And now it's to the point where they're just so fluid. And that comes across to the people that I meet at these open houses, because they've come in, they see my setup, and they say, okay, this is a pretty, dialed in, as you said, individual with how they're operating within their business. And that was probably one of the things that, and you hear it all the time, like you're probably a big fan of Alex Hormozy. He says you're going to learn more in the first 10,000 hours of actually doing something than trying to learn about it over the next 10,000 hours. And you're going to fail. And I failed so much. But I was not going back to a 9-to-5 job. That was not an option for me.
Well, once you get a taste of it, that's the thing, like you get a taste, and man, I sold this place and I made 80 grand. Like, that's like a holy shit.
Exactly.
Like, what else is possible, right? Even though you only made 30 grand your first year, which by the way, some people, like in their mind, they go, man, I make 30, 40, 50 grand now. If I could just make that, if I could just make exactly that. But
Sure.
I'm in the real estate game, like I'm all in, dude, right? But what, so is there anything that you were doing that wasn't working? Because a lot of times we talk about what did work, but was there anything that you've realized now looking back, like, man, that wasn't working and I was doing it?
I've tried it all. I've been on dialers, I've done cold calling. That definitely didn't work for me. A lot of people were telling me that's the fastest way to get listings. That's how you're going to build your business the quickest. And my outlook on how I wanted to build my business wasn't necessarily the quickest turnover. It was building a relationship with an entire community so that people knew who I was, not necessarily just trying to transact one person at a time and then never talking to them again. My goal is to have a crowd of raving fans that whenever they catch out of the corner of their ear that somebody mentions real estate, they think, oh my gosh, they got to talk to David. He was, he's so helpful and he's helped me build wealth, and I know that he can do it for this person. Let me spread the love.
How do you balance that with like, but I got to make money now? Right?
It's tough, right? There's definitely been uncomfortable times right now. We'll talk about the big purchase that we're going through with the lounge. And they're definitely uncomfortable times, but I've set out the thought process that I'm in a position in my life right now where I'm open to a little bit higher risk compared to some other people I may know, like my mentor, for example. And in order to get to the level that she's at, she started the same way. She went out, she leveraged, she started with some risk. Neither of us came from money. And so that was one of the objectives moving forward was, okay, I'm in this position now where I haven't taken any risk up until this point, other than buying that first double wide, which wasn't really that much of a risk. But the 9-to-5, that's no risk. You get your residual paycheck every 2 weeks and there's nothing to worry about. And I'm one of those people where when I catch myself getting too comfortable, I will put myself into some sort of corner that I have to fight out of. Because I know otherwise, I don't have a family per se. I don't necessarily need to be out here absolutely crushing it so that I can provide for a family or send it down to heirs or whatever that looks like in your world. But to me, personally, that was one of the shifts that I made when I started being an entrepreneur, was putting myself into these positions that were a little more uncomfortable than I wanted to be. And we all know that saying, growth comes from being uncomfortable. And so I took that to heart. And I think that was one of the biggest things, because I had never really read much. I didn't work out because I was a laborer. I was already getting a lot of physical activity. But when I started becoming an entrepreneur, it was like, okay, I need to start doing some uncomfortable things that then just become habit and put me one step above somebody else. Because it's not hard to be above average in real estate if you're transacting as an agent or realtor, broker, what have you. You just got to push a little bit beyond the next person. And I would see that in the trades field, because I would work my way up and somebody would be in the same position forever, where you outwork them just a little bit, get recognized for it, you climb one rung of the ladder, you rinse and repeat.
Dude, I think, like you talked about, putting yourself in a position to be uncomfortable so that you can continue to grow. It's so hard to do, but it's like, if you have the ability to somehow define a trigger, right? Because it's like comfort leads to complacency, which leads to mediocrity, right? Like when you get comfortable, you're like, oh, I don't have to try so hard, right? I mean, dude, I've been through this several times where, like, I've worked my ass off, and it's almost like it's something that I'm working on, because it's like a self-sabotaging behavior almost, right? It's I work my ass off, I achieve these remarkable results, and then I find a way to fuck that up, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Settle it.
Yeah, because you get comfortable, right? And so, Solly and I just finished 75 Hard, and it's like, it's an amazing thing, it's not a health and fitness challenge, it's a mental toughness challenge, but talk about putting you into a place where you're forced to have a zero options mentality, right? Like, once you commit to it, there are zero options there. And I think that's the problem with our society today, dude, is like, everybody thinks they've got options, and when you give yourself too many options, it's easy to become complacent and not pick a path and just go down it, right? Same thing with marriage, right? It's like, everybody knows that they can get a divorce. So what do you do when it's really fucking hard?
Yeah.
Right? Do you push through because you made vows and, like, no matter what, I'm sticking with this person? Now, I understand, like, there are one-off situations, right? Like, there are anomalies and reasons maybe you shouldn't be with somebody. If there's physical abuse or something going on, like, that's a different story. But I think finding a way to put yourself into uncomfortable positions, forcing yourself to grow, forcing yourself to reinvent yourself and do something totally different is the only option. If what you want is success and feel proud about the work that you're doing.
It's ultimate growth, and it's not for everybody. Some people are totally happy, working for somebody else and doing their job, and then they can be definitely passionate about it, and no harm, no foul there. But if you're going down the entrepreneurship route, the cutthroat aspect of it is that there's somebody out there that's pushing a little harder than you, and they're going to get the results that you want. And so if you want those results, you're going to have to compete with them.
Dude, and I think it's, by the way, I don't think entrepreneurship is for everybody. I think it shouldn't be for everybody. I think that it's an amazing opportunity for anybody that chooses to go down that path, but I think that social media glamorizes it, right? You see, like, everybody showing off their Lamborghini. Yeah, you're selling sunset and all this stuff. And it's like, I was just listening to this interview this morning with Russell Brunson on Ryan Pineda's podcast. And this is the guy who created ClickFunnels, right?
Sure.
And he built this thing into it. He's done over $1 billion in sales, this kid, dude, out of Boise, Idaho, right? But he was talking about how his whole business model was developed off of basically paid ads and creating funnels.
Cool.
But now he's like, now the cost per lead is so high that, like, yeah, there's still a world where it works and there's some profit, but he's like, now I have to reinvent myself and start to do organic content. So now Russell Brunson's going into doing content and creating his own podcast, because he's like, once you build that, once you develop the personal brand, then you can have your iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, you can have all your content going out. And then, because it's different before, when Google wasn't such a big thing, people would just go there to be like, oh yeah, he's legit. But really it was like the ad that got you. Now people are like, hey, before I do business with David, like, I want to go check out all of his, what's he doing on Instagram? Does he have a podcast? Does he have a YouTube channel? And that's just where the world's going. So now this dude is having to reinvent his entire business model to go organic, because the cost per lead acquisition is so much, cheaper once you start doing organic content. But dude, he talked about how when he was creating the company, it was basically a software as a service company. And he's like, well, I don't have any experience in this. Like, how do people sell software as a service company? Like, how do they sell this stuff? And he sort of stumbled upon doing these webinars or these events. And he had given this speech, and at the end of that speech, people were like running and trampling over each other to like throw their credit card at the back of the room to buy his shit. Sure. And they went and celebrated that night. He's like, dude, we just made $150,000. But he's like, no, this is way bigger than that.
Yeah.
Because we just cracked the code with the message. So now he goes, okay, I figured out what works. And so then he spent like the next, I don't know how many years or iterations of this presentation, like tweaking every little thing. And he talks about how he knew when he was taking a sip of water. He knew when he was laughing at a joke that he would say. He had the whole thing so perfectly planned out. And he's like, no, listen, when I do like not impromptu, but like coaching type of stuff, that's more just me winging it. He's like, but when I'm on stage and like the intention is to sell a certain number of units, like I take that shit seriously. I had everything perfectly scripted, but he was just crushing it from this business model. But like that took him years to develop that, right? I think a lot of people, they see the end result. This guy who's now created ClickFunnels, who's worth, how many hundreds of millions of dollars, he's got $1 billion company, right? But they don't see, dude, the blood, sweat, the tears, the times where he wanted to quit, the times where he did something and it didn't work 1,000 times over, right? And I think that's what it's important that people understand what they're getting into if they embark on this journey. And you better have a spouse that understands the roller coaster of being an entrepreneur as well, or that's gonna steal from you and limit your ability to actually create the success you want if they're not willing to ride that roller coaster, because it's not always success.
Yeah, and it's not even, it goes beyond your marriage too. It goes with the people that you surround yourself with. That was one of the other big ventures that I took on when I started realizing that I needed more support, whether that was mental or, accountability friend or somebody that has new ideas to bring to the table. You got to have these people in your life that are on the same path as you, that can offer similar thought processes that you're, once again, going back to like the RAS, reticular activation, you start surrounding yourself with people that say, yeah, we can hit $100,000 a month. Mm-hmm. And it starts becoming reality. And they're talking about ways that it can happen. And so you start naturally getting into the mind space of that. But I'm glad you brought him up, because let's look at somebody who's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, has $1 billion business. He's still up against adversity.
Totally.
Things shifted in his industry, and now he has to, again, not recreate, but adapt to whatever's going on. So there's no, I think the point that I'm getting to here is that there's really no way to get to a position that, at least from my perspective, in both of our industries, where it's some sort of level of comfort.
Yeah.
Things are always changing. We're always having to adapt. No matter how big your business is, you're going to come up against issues and adversity and changes with regulations in the industries and the laws and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because regardless how big you become, there's still going to be similar obstacles that we're going to have to overcome.
You just get better at making decisions and solving problems as you go along, right?
100%.
Like, and back to the Alex Hormozy thing, I've heard him say that, and dude, it's so true. And I share this story all the time where, when I was thinking about doing this podcast, honestly, man, like I like analyzed and researched shit for like 2 years, man. I was just consuming content and trying to understand and going down the rabbit hole on YouTube and like trying to prepare and make sure it's all perfect. And I got out the lighting and like I was so in the weeds around this thing, right? And I definitely learned some stuff, but then I finally said, dude, fuck this. I'm doing the fucking podcast. Like, I'm just done. I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to do it.
Roll the camera.
Right? I just said, let's do it.
Yep.
And I'm going to get my first guest on here, and then we're going to just start. And dude, within 2 weeks of doing this, I don't know how many shows we filmed in 2 weeks. I think we filmed like maybe a half a dozen to a dozen shows within a couple of weeks. Dude, I learned more in that 2 weeks about, I mean, even like something as simple as this clock that's up here, right? Because what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to do this. Sure. With a guest.
Yeah.
Right? So you start to think of like, there's just little things. How can I be a better interviewer? How can I prepare? But then there's a whole business side with like, how do I line up guests? How much time is that taking from my other business? Right? So, but you don't ever have the ability to understand the problems. If you're not creating the problems, you almost have to create the problems to understand what the nuances are to become better and create success within, whatever it is you're doing.
That is so true, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we see that all the time in my side of the field because I interact with a lot of newer agents. We do trainings at our office and things like that for some of the newer agents that want to help getting on their feet. And you hear it all the time. I hear the same thing. Well, open houses don't work. I've gone and set up 2 of them and nobody came through, yada, 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 whatever that looks like. When in reality, they're missing something. There's a piece to the puzzle there because there are people out here that operate on a high level just off of open houses. Mm-hmm. And figuring out and just going to them and saying, okay, this didn't work this way this time. Why is that? And sometimes we just totally skip the why is it and go to, well, it didn't work, so I'm gonna try something else. Mm-hmm. Same thing to marriage. Sometimes we get mad at our spouses and it's like, instead of trying to be mad at each other, be mad at the situation or be mad at what led up to you feeling that way, because it's not between you and your spouse. It's about something that's going through your mind. It's about something that could be happening within your business. I just had this happen last night because we got this huge event coming up this weekend, and I'm like, just pulling my hair out, making sure everything's going to pan out correctly. And I got a little snippy with my wife, and at the end of the night, I was like, you know what? I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. That was just something that I'm dealing with on this end of the fence. And
so I want you to talk about the event. So talk about this business that you purchased, which was a big surprise to me. When you told me, I was like, whoa, dude, that's awesome. Like, how the hell did that happen, right?
Yeah.
So talk about that acquisition, and then talk about the event that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was a mutual client of ours. They are from Armenia originally. They immigrated here, lived in LA for a few years, and then moved to Denver and built this just incredibly beautiful hookah lounge. And it's a social lounge where people come to do work, to interact. We have, like event nights and things like that. And originally we said no. This is me and one of my other lender partners, because he used to frequent the lounges. And so we had a mutual client. We were working on some real estate stuff. And they came to us one night and just basically bluntly asked if we wanted to purchase the lounge. And I said, no way. I am so tied in with real estate right now. I don't have time for that. I don't even want to consider it. Mm-hmm. And over the next 24, 48 hours, me and him are going back and forth, kind of talking about what it would look like if we were to consider it. And at the end of the day, we were getting a fully functioning business that was already established for a year, that had staff, that was basically managed. And it was also an opportunity for me to get into another realm of connecting with community that I hadn't even considered. Mm-hmm. Who thinks about when you buy a social lounge so that you can be in front of more people? Mm-hmm. When it's just like my open houses, my philosophy is that you're getting people to come to you that most of the time are willing to talk about one thing or another, but at a social lounge, you're with people that they're there on, weird hours sometimes. We're open until midnight, and these people sometimes have a day job, and then they come there to do like a side hustle, for example. And so I get to be in front of these individuals that tend to operate at a little bit of a higher level than somebody that just wants to do their 9 to 5 and go home, eat and sleep, rinse and repeat. And so the whole breakdown, it all happened pretty quick. Once we decided to pull the trigger, it was about 3 weeks worth of paperwork and transacting. I was able to actually use equity from the house that I bought 2 years ago for a portion of my payment. So real estate's there, helped me out.
It's leverage. That's
Yet
amazing.
again.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so now we're getting to the point where we have this huge festival coming up this weekend. It's a 3-day festival, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Each day is a little different. Fridays, we typically do belly dancers, so we're sticking with that theme for this one. Belly dancer and DJ night for Friday, so
Okay.
that's more like the party day.
Okay.
Saturday, this is Lux Hookah, and our Instagram is Lux Hookah Inc. for anybody who wants to take a look.
Cool.
And Lux Fest is the event coming up. Saturday, we're doing a games day. It's going to be like a deal or no deal. We're doing giveaways. I think we're giving away like a MetaQuest 3, Amazon gift cards, and some good
Sweet.
stuff.
Sweet.
And then Sunday is the one I'm looking forward to. This is a meet your local professionals, community-oriented day. We're going to have vendor booths set up with different people in the community to connect with. We're going to be doing like a panel talk about my experience in real estate, what my goals and aspirations are, how I've gotten to where I'm at. Melody's going to do a little panel on investment properties.
How cool is that?
This will be a place for them to go and say, okay, I don't really know a real estate agent, but I'm curious about learning more about these individuals, or I don't have an insurance guy, so let me go see who they have at this event, or I need a financial advisor, let me see who these guys brought to the table. And the whole theory is that we, at the end of the night, it's going to end with some networking and just kind of, again, my whole theory behind most of what I do in my business is just that community orientation to not hard sell anybody, but just let everyone know out there that has come across me that I'm open to being a resource for them if they want to team up and go down that road together.
Dude, that's awesome, man.
Thanks.
Congratulations on it, and
Appreciate
I'm
that.
sure it'll be super successful. I'll see if I can get my wife out on Friday to come see the belly dancer. I think my wife used to belly dance like back.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, she's half Lebanese, half Lebanese, half Chilean, and so that's like kind of in her culture.
She would love the vibe there.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, dude, I want to wrap up with, where do you think this industry is headed? Like, what do you think the future of real estate looks like?
I think we're going back to a level of professionalism that we haven't seen in a little while, and I am beyond ready for that because everyone listening to this has heard the stigma of real estate agents, and statistically, they're not wrong. Most agents out here don't transact at a high level. The average transacting real estate is 3 to 4 deals a year, and that's average when you have teams doing 300 deals a year. So really, a lot of people out here are doing 1 to 2 across the nation. And I have trouble tackling the idea that you can provide a high level of service when you're only really practicing 1 or 2 times a year. It comes down to that consistency, because you're not failing enough to build the systems to be able to provide for your people at a high level. You are going to fail, but if you don't fail enough, you're going to keep failing and you're not going to be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like you said, there's thousands of iterations that most people go through as they're building business. And if you don't hit roadblocks along the way, because 2 times a year you have family or friends that just send you a deal and you kind of walk them through the process without actually going down the road of learning hard negotiation tactics so that you can go to bat for your client, or learning how to have a conversation with them that's difficult and helping them come to a decision, as opposed to trying to tell them or sell them on moving forward. And then being in a position where you're transacting at a level where you have the ability, if somebody isn't necessarily working well with you as a teammate per se, you can walk away from that person. You're not in a position where you're thinking, gosh, I need this commission. I'll work with anybody, which is the last place you want to be in, because you want to build the business with the people that you want to work with, and that's how you're going to stay in business. That's how you're going to remain passionate, and that's how you're going to continue to operate at a high level for the sake of the service of your clients.
Yeah. Right on, brother. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Guys, go check out Lux
Hookah Inc.
Lux Hookah Inc. And then your
Real Estate _value.
Sweet, buddy. Thanks for coming on the show, man. It was awesome to have you.
Appreciate you, man. Good to see you.
Bye, buddy.
Every time that I see a limit, I push right past it. Don't care if you got here first, the one to win is the last one standing. Say my life is like luck, nah, I had to plan it. The way I work is out of this earth. I can feel the momentum. Need it all, no fractions. Dream it, then I gotta have it in the